Welcome to Spiritual Foundations for Life. Psalm 95 is a model for approaching God in prayer. It begins with praising and thanking God in Psalm 95, verse 2. Oh, let us come before him with thanksgiving. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul seldom mentioned prayer without an attitude of gratitude. He said in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 16, I have not stopped giving thanks for you, remembering you in my prayers. He added in Philippians chapter 4, verse 6, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 16 to 18, God says, devote yourself to prayer, being watchful and thankful. Being watchful and thankful. And then he went on and encouraged us to rejoice always, pray continuously, and give thanks in all circumstances. You know, there are three levels of prayer in communicating with God. And each level incorporates praise and thanksgiving. I don't know if you realize that. The first level of prayer is called petition, which Paul mentioned in Philippians chapter 4, verse 6. And the Apostle James added in James chapter 4, verse 2, you do not have because you do not ask God. However, he qualifies this by saying in James chapter 4, verse 3, when you ask, you do not receive because you ask with the wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. As shared previously, petition should be consistent with the attitude shown in the Lord's Prayer. But when we ask God for things, we should always pray with thanksgiving, expecting that we will receive. The second level of prayer is called dialogue. See, petition is often only one way communication, but the next level of prayer is personal. It is dialoguing with God in prayer, speaking to God, and then listening for him to answer. In Psalm 95, verse 78, the psalmist says that we personally and humbly approach God and in that manner. And as we do so, we are told that as we hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. The word here means to listen with the intent to obey. Often, if we have heard from God, we may be inclined to harden our hearts, as it said in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 7, because we really don't want to do what he tells us to do. So when we dialogue with God, we come to speak to him and listen to him, but then decide in advance we're going to obey whatever he says. So we have to avoid that temptation of disobeying God, because it will adversely affect our relationship with God, which is always God's first concern in the first place. Now there's a third level. See, as we go even deeper into intimate prayer with God, we go to the third level. The third level of prayer is called intercessory prayer, which is the highest level of prayer. What happens there? Intercessors hear from God, sense the burden to pray for another person or another need, and can continue in prayer until that burden is lifted. Seldom, if ever, is there prayer time in public. It's usually in the privacy of their own homes and often late at night. That God accomplishes much of his work through these people who know how to pray in intercessory prayer. I share these three levels of prayer with you because if we're going to know God, we have to be talking to him, in dialogue with him, listening to him, and then responding to what he says. And I hope that as you begin to pray these three levels, that you will learn more about God, about who he is, okay? God bless you. See you tomorrow for another episode of Spiritual Foundations for Life.